Well, brother, here we are, man. We finally pulled it off.
That was difficult, dude. That was rough.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of The Last Set. Holy shit, before we get into any topics, we need to talk about the past 4 hours that we've gone through just to get to this point. I mean, we're literally using a table that has a busted leg. We got two completely different laptops that we've been trying to figure out how to use audio, 2 different cameras, and yeah, we have no knowledge or experience of any of this stuff.
See, the thing is, I did already do my research beforehand, and then as soon as they always say, oh yeah, it's so easy, it's so simple, and then when I got into plugging it in and starting it up, it just doesn't go your way. I would know. We knew the first podcast was not going to go smoothly. We knew that because it never is easy the first time.
Whenever you start something out for the first time, it's always going to be right. You're never good at something the first time you ever do it. But the real reason is, the importance of this situation is that we've started now. And, it's always going to go up from here.
Yeah.
Like I was saying just before we started this podcast, Jeff Bezos, when he started Amazon, he had this shitty little room with this laptop and a desk. I'm pretty sure it had a busted leg and an old school computer.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so this is a 3-year podcast in the making, man.
Well, you brought it up a while ago, and we didn't give it. Or we gave it some thought, but we just at the time when we were doing it at uni, we couldn't really do it at that point, and then I asked you not that long ago, and we were both way too excited about it just to put it aside because, every time I was talking to you, you were like, dude, I'm so excited. I felt like it was the right thing to do because where we are, they're closer to the end of our degrees. We've got a little bit more time to be a bit more creative in that. Dude, I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's fun just to do creative stuff. Especially when it's new things that you don't know if it's going to do that well, but I find that this podcast is just going to be fun because the thing is, I was telling you off air, when we sit down and things like that, we say the exact same things, and I was just like, for a podcast, there's no difference. There's no difference at all. The only difference is we have mics, we have cameras, and there's a bit of editing, and we put it out there because that's all we do. Whenever we were sitting down and having food, it was almost like we were having a podcast. It was weird.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure one of the first conversations we ever had when we met at uni, 3.5 years ago,
yeah.
We were talking about setting up a podcast, and now it's literally happened. And it was also something that we would just joke about during when we were having lunch. Yeah, man, we should talk about this kind of stuff if we ever had one. And now, finally, 3.5 years later, and Jack's grown a whole lot of hair later.
I grew a lot of hair during that time, but this is, how long have I grown my hair up? Probably 2 years. 2 years, and it was short like yours. You won't be able to see it because it's underneath a beanie, but he's got quite short hair, and I had the exact same haircut. Maybe a bit shorter. Now I look like Street Jesus.
Street Jesus.
Yeah, I took some inspiration from George Masvidal.
You're almost there. You just need to grow the beard out a little bit.
I need to grow the beard. Well, this is laziness because I grew it out. I grew it out for about 5 weeks, and I was looking a little gross. It always does at the start, just like this podcast. But this is about 3 weeks now, and it's getting a bit. It's no longer peach fuzz. It's more. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a learning curve. I mean, all the stuff that we've got in front of us is all the money that we had through isolation. I was working and you was working a little bit, and then when the idea came to mind, we realized that this is going to take a whole lot of effort just to get to this point. I remember, for the people who are watching us on YouTube, the camera which I'm using to film for right now and the microphone that I'm using to speaking, I sold my PS4 and games for it. And also I was working on...
Oh, tragic. You sold your PS4 console. Oh.
Well, the PS5's coming out soon, so I don't think there's any use for the PS4.
No, maybe not.
I hear it's going to be pretty backwards obsolete. But yeah, I am absolutely proud of the effort, even though we are right now in your bedroom on a bad table.
You already gave it away on the first podcast.
Well, I'm proud that we've got to this point, and I think it's time we jump into it.
I think it's time we jump into. So, because this is the first podcast, we should probably outline what our podcast is about. So, because we haven't had a definite bio for what this podcast is, pretty much Joe and I just sitting down having a chat. It will tend to be to do with UFC, boxing, a lot of fighting sports and other things related, but because we're just like two dudes walking about the earth, we're going to talk about whatever's going to go on in mainstream media and things like that. Stuff about like uni, because we're both uni students, possibly going to our masters and things like that. So we're going to talk about student life and what that's like and what we would probably tell other people, as well as, you do a bit of stand-up comedy. We're big fans of stand-up comedy, so we'll probably talking about that. And you have an interesting work life of many perspectives. So, but we will bring that up in some other podcast. But for now, we today we only got to be able to see the last two fights of the fight night tonight, which was Volkov versus Blades. We missed the Pennington fight. We know Pennington won. No real surprise there. She's pretty world class.
Yeah. Well, looking at the statistics, she actually won by decision, and she won. All three of the judges scored her. But see, that was the thing we were just talking about a lot during today's fights. The judges.
Terrible refs. Because what's going to come up in our podcast is we use an app called Verdict MMA, and you'll see them also on Instagram. That's why I found them on Instagram months ago. And I just thought, because you always see on the Joe Rogan podcast, there should be a global scorecard of some kind, and they went ahead and they did it. So you can join us on that or have a look on our Instagram about us predicting fights and things like that. And you move up in the rankings to be a more effective predictor of MMA and that. And you're allowed to score round per round and things like of who won that round. And then you listen to what the judges did and you're like, what?
Yeah, like some of the scores that they give to certain fighters for a round, they go very, very easy on them. You know what I mean? Well, because the problem with most of the judges is that the judges aren't. They argue that the judges aren't actual legitimate fighters.
Yeah, it's okay. You don't need to be in the ring, but you should have a little bit of experience, because a lot of these people come from boxing, and boxing is not the same thing. A lot of them, because they come from boxing, they see takedowns as such an amazing thing, where if you get a takedown, like a good example is Darren Till versus Kelvin Gastelum. That went to split decision. I watched that over 5 rounds. I don't think he lost a round. I don't think Till lost a round. And the only reason I can see the refs doing that is because Gastelum would take him down, as he does because he's a wrestler, pulls him down, Till gets up straight away. And for some reason, the refs are going to call that, oh, this is an amazing takedown. It's not. You took him down for 3 seconds. He got back up straight away with a bit of momentum, got up, and he hit him in the face. And they're going to be like, you know what? I didn't see that strike to the face. I saw he took him down. I'm like, for what? He didn't do anything. I don't know. He was a little love tap on the ground, and they got back up again. It was strange.
Yeah, well, there wasn't really many. There was a lot of takedowns in the Curtis Blades versus Alexander Volkov fight. But first, I want to talk about the Josh Emmett versus Shane Burke.
The good fight, dude.
That was
good
a killer fight. Hats off to both fighters. Right at the start, we both predicted that Josh Emmett was going to win, but we didn't think he was going to go all the way to decision.
I thought it was going to be round 2 or 3. I know on the verdict I chose 2, but originally I chose 3, and I should have stuck with 3. But that's because I was saying that we saw him fight Michael Johnson, and he messed up Michael Johnson in the 5th round? I think it was the 5th round because it was a main event or something like that. It was on I think it was one of Gaethje was fighting someone. I can't remember. And he was on the undercard. Not the undercard. He was on the co-main or something like that. and I think they went 5 rounds, and he starched him in the 5th round, and he was KO'd. And so you know that Emmett, because Michael Johnson's always been around like the top 5 but now Josh Emmett, because this was a featherweight fight, Josh Emmett went in there and he went in hard. Like I think it was against Shane Burgos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Burgos, but it was featherweight ranked 9 versus 10, and you could tell Emmett, there was just a huge difference between 9 and 10, because Emmett, he carries that power to the very late rounds, because it was like, it was a competitive fight. It's not like, but Burgos did he got dominated majority of the time.
Yeah, well, one thing that we definitely learned was that Shane Burgos, he took a lot of shots, man. Like Josh Emmett, he has this crazy over right hand, which we saw him throw multiple times. And I remember you telling me he keeps throwing the left cross, the right overhand.
He goes a left short hook, and he goes for this really long extended right overhand, and it's just so it can just come over his guard and clip him. And we saw in the later rounds it did clip him, and it did take him down, which is significant, because I think that round was it round 3 or 4?
He knocked him down in.
So not 4. It wasn't 5 rounds. It must have been in the 3rd round.
Yeah,
would have been the 3rd round, I think. And I don't know why I thought that was 5 rounds for a second.
Yeah. So what happened was Emmett knocked him down twice in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
The first one was actually with a jab.
It was with a stiff jab, and it caught. And I think the reason why he got knocked down is he moved right into it, and it was a stiff jab, bang. And then that other one was such a crisp right hand that came over the top. He twisted all the way into it, and it caught him right on the side of the jaw, and he was out. But he recovered super well. That dude has a chin in the first place.
He did take a lot of shots, especially on the ground as well. And there was not only that, but he also got clipped at one point. I mean, he clipped him with the right cross, and we thought, stumbling around. And then after he was knocked down the second time, he stayed, and he was actually smiling on his way down. And he's
a madman. He's a madman.
Here's the other thing that was quite surprising is that right at the start, Shane had a height and reach advantage. The reason I had a look as well, and I just thought, like, a lot of people were thinking that Burgos was going to win in round 2 by KO. And you can say that because he had a 5.5 inch height advantage, definitely longer arms. But when I was watching them, Burgos has got such a low stance that it made it kind of like obsolete. It didn't matter because the one thing Burgos, I must say, did well was his lower calf kicks. He definitely, because Emmett does move around quite a bit and he tries to cut angles. He's a bit stiff. When you compare it to someone like Max Holloway or Conor McGregor in the featherweight division. We've got to talk about him later.
I know, we're going to have to talk about...
That man's mad, man.
I don't know. He is a madman.
He's a madman. Well, the thing is, we'll talk about him later, but, like, I don't buy for a second that he's retired.
He's not out.
That.
He's not out. We'll talk about that later, though. But...
Anyway, are you happy with the end result of the fight? I mean, I thought it was a very, very
I
solid
thought
fight.
it was more solid than the actual main event.
I think it was, yes. So, moving on to that main event. So, Alexander Volkov versus Curtis Blades. We were a little bit disappointed. Like, the first 20 seconds, they were exchanging blows, which I was pretty happy with. And then, at the end of the first minute, Blades literally just went straight into the takedown, and from then the whole fight just became completely one-sided.
Well, I think he definitely did quite a lot of takedowns in this fight, but even straight off the bat when we were watching it, in the first minute, he did a really good takedown, took him down. I don't know if it was that super effective, but throughout this whole fight, he was taking down. He definitely, I think his coaches was definitely saying, look, you've lost to Ngannou these 2 times. Obviously, Ngannou's got really good striking. You need to stick to your strength, stick to your wrestling, which is what he did. Yeah. He did it for every round, and you could tell it was tiring him out. You could hear him in the mic in his corner just going.
Yeah,
he was breathing hard.
So that's the thing. Right now, because the fights are going on basically inside the Las Vegas Performance Center or something like that. Or something like that.
Yeah, the UFC PI, I think it is.
That's it. Yeah. So there's no crowd there. It's just people who are employees of the UFC, the commentators, the fighters, and the fight crew, you can hear them, the fighters, coaches, talking to them so much more clearly. And you can also actually hear...
The other fighter can hear the exact same stuff, though. That's the problem. Also, dude, I was about to say, the reason why I expected Volkov and Blades to... I knew it was going to go to decision. I did call that. I called it a decision. You would see that on Verdict MMA that I did call that. But I was expecting a bit more action because that octagon is so much smaller. Mm-hmm. It is so much smaller. And a lot of these strikers, like we saw with Cody was in and out, but he couldn't utilize his movement, so he did have to, crack, and which he did, and it worked out well for him. A lot of people are saying that with this smaller cage, we're getting more knockouts, and I think you could make a good point. It's definitely a good correlation.
Well, you brought up Cody Garbrandt, basically, that he's made his resurgence. And I can say, man, I could not be any more happy that he's back. Because one thing we used to talk about, I mean, no offense to Cody, but he's a guy who kind of thinks he's a scrapper, or he thinks he's got a bit of a chin.
He does, it's just...
But he doesn't.
He likes to get in there, and he likes to have a scrap, and it is good. It shows that he's got a heart, but... He seems to always, even it was against Peter Munhoz. He went and did that. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he did the exact same thing. He did the exact same thing. He did it with TJ twice. Mm-hmm. His best performance was from until he comes back in. His best performance, I think, was against Dominic Cruz. He took him to school. Dominic Cruz always showed that he couldn't be touched. He said, you've got so much power, you're never going to touch me. Cody showed him, hey, you can't touch me. He was so much better. He was breakdancing. He was doing all kinds of stuff. He looked invincible in that fight.
He was very relaxed. See, most fighters, he's one of those fighters that just hops into the ring and he just blocks out the external thing, or he just does it like some sort of showboating to actually, get the whole... It's like build some sort of persona for himself, It's the one thing we always talk about with Tony Ferguson. He calls himself the boogeyman. And there's times where he literally just gets inside the ring and he just does that taunting. And he's also a very good freestyle fighter. He does he has so many moves in his arsenal. You never know what he's going to throw. It's going to be one of those leg sweeps you see out of an action movie, or he's just going to throw those heavy, sharp elbows, And... all I can say is thank you to the UFC for giving us some good fights, because I was really satisfied with the way that Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson card went down. I mean, first of all, Francis Ngannou, who the fuck?
Everyone, Tony's the boogeyman. Ngannou is the boogeyman.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to fight that guy. And Rosenstrike was like, yeah, I'll fight. But in his last fight, he didn't look that good.
Yeah.
And he did knock out over him, fair play, he did. And he split his lip open hard. But he was losing up to that point. And then in the last bit of the round, he knocked him out. While you were speaking, I just wanted to come back to Cody Garbrandt. I saw on my Facebook, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, who's got the best striking? Is it Conor? Is it Tony? Is it Gaethje?" And they were running through it. Is it Georges St. Pierre? And it was like a collage of all these different fighters, and you had to choose one. Do you know who was missing? Cody. Mm-hmm. Cody. I'll show you right here. I already knew about this, but he has a 32-0 record as an amateur. He was an excellent wrestler. The dude's well-rounded. I mean, I don't think we saw a whole lot of his jiu-jitsu game. But he certainly got takedowns. He took down Dominic Cruz. So he does have... And we know Dominic can wrestle.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Dominic Cruz, on that card of Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, there was a controversial loss for Dominic Cruz to Henry Cejudo, or hats off to Henry Cejudo. I'd definitely say, even though people may argue that he's not one of the most pound-for-pound greatest, however, I would definitely argue he's one of the most accomplished fighters of all time.
You're talking about Henry?
Yeah, Henry.
Henry definitely, the gold medal in wrestling, at that Olympic level, is insane. He
Yeah.
did it at that 21?
21, yeah.
21.
He was the youngest. I think he was one of the youngest to ever go to the Olympics.
Yeah, he defended his title, his bantamweight title, after getting off TJ against Dominic. You can talk about I would have liked if Dominic didn't say anything about the ref, and he's just said, look, it wasn't a ref issue, but he didn't harp on about it, he smelled of cigarettes and alcohol and stuff like that, because I very much doubt he would have got away with that with other refs.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was just like the way that he had a moment to himself. There's a saying that goes on with everybody, and especially in fighters, they say you got to complain. You can complain for 5 minutes and then you move on.
Yeah,
that's a saying I always hear, and that's kind of felt like it was for Dominic Cruz. Like when you lose, you've just been punched in the face a bunch of times. You're emotional. I totally understand that. How he even like swept his arm away from the referee.
He didn't want to be touched, dude. He didn't want to be touched at all.
And then behind him was Dana White, and then he went up to Dana White and was like complaining to him the whole time. And then after that, he said, "Okay, that's it, all done."
The thing is, though, Dominic will always have a really good career as an analyst, because he's so good at breaking it down, like from wrestling wise to jiu-jitsu, moving from transition. Because Joe Rogan's really good as well, but Dominic Cruz is really good, especially with striking as well. He picks up a lot of small bit things about footwork and things like that. He's one of the best.
Yeah.
Did you want to get into the next UFC card?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right.
Because, the next one is going to be the main event is going to be Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, Dan Hooker, he's from New Zealand, so...
I'm going for Poirier.
Oh.
I'm going for Poirier.
Oh, my God.
I know there's a lot of really good people coming out of it's City Kickboxing, right?
Yeah.
You.
So hungry, just help yourself, Tim, in the kitchen.
I think we'll edit that out. I think with Israel Adesanya, next level. Alexander Volkanovski, next level. Dan Hooker's certainly a big guy for lightweight, because he's a big gangly kind of guy.
Yeah, there's a couple of statues that you get when it comes to lightweight. You either get the really short guys who are really, really buff and all that, and then
Chad Mendes and Alex Volkanovski and
absolutely. But then you also get the guys who are quite tall but hell lanky, have extremely long arms.
Israel and Dan Hooker.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it's also like that for a couple of other divisions. You look at John Jones. John Jones has probably one of the most awkward bodies for...
Tiniest legs I've ever seen.
Oh,
right? But that doesn't mean he's not strong, because we've seen him squat, we've seen him deadlift.
Yeah.
The man's got power.
Yeah.
And his brother is next level athlete as well. It's just in the genes. And the thing is, with MMA, you can't just look at them and be like, oh, he's really buff and he's really thin, so the big guy's going to beat the thin guy. That's not how it works. Especially when it's quite common for a lot of these guys to gas. That gangly kind of, that reach advantage is huge in MMA.
Mm-hmm. Well, because since we brought up the topic of John Jones, I need to bring up the topic of Dominic Reyes. I still hold to this day Dominic Reyes won that fight.
He did win that fight. He won that fight.
Because the fact that for John, he's a champion, right? He's probably one of the greatest fighters ever. No doubt. But in that fight, Dominic Reyes he was there in the first couple of rounds.
He was switched on.
Switched on. And he hit Jones with some shots. And he was chasing him around the cage.
I know.
So now, say what you like about the fight, but afterwards, you got to say, oh, there's no way Jones dominated that fight. He won that in decision by the skin of his teeth. And then he was celebrating.
I still don't think he won, though.
Yeah.
I still see it. I think when you messaged me, you were like, what?
I remember that. I was actually, because of what I do for a living for the people at home, is I actually work in the UFC gym in Balcata, and I was watching it. And then in capital letters, I think I go, Jones, Dominic Reyes was robbed. And I held on to it for 3 days.
I know, you were very cut up about it, but I wasn't even arguing with you. I was like, yeah, he did, and that didn't stop it. You were like, yes, he won.
That's the problem when people fight John Jones, right? Let's just talk about his past few fights recently. So he fought Thiago Santos, and one of the judges scored against John, right? Then he fought Dominic Reyes, and then
So it's Jan Blachowicz
yeah,
that's coming up next.
yeah,
And now JJ is very upset about how much pay he's getting.
Yeah.
So now he's like, oh, I'm going to bounce.
yeah. So here's the problem also when it comes to fighting John Jones is if you have a controversial have a match against him the first time and it's quite controversial, it takes forever to get a rematch. Let's look at what happened to Alexander Gustafsson. People held that match.
That took years to get that back.
Same with Daniel Cormier. It took a long time. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So Dominic Reyes, it almost feels like John Jones is just putting them off, because he feels like...
I think because the thing is that, it's a give and take because Jones has fought everybody. He's fought, and since he was such a young age getting into the UFC, and he became he was the youngest UFC champion ever, particularly in the light heavyweight division, which is one of the most talent-ready division. He's fought so many good guys back to back to back to back, and he's made a lot of money. You don't really know perfectly how much money they're making because it's not fully disclosed. On top of sponsorships and things like that, because I'm pretty sure he's with who is he with? He's with some popular
Reebok. He was with Reebok.
No, supplement company. Is it BSN or something like that?
We might look into that.
Anyway, while you're looking that up, he's fought the best of the best, and he's considered the greatest of all time. We're not going to get into steroids and things like that, which kind of clouds it and whatever he's had and going in his personal life and that. But
well, what is it? The thing is, he is probably inside the ring. He's very, very accomplished and very, very respected. But at the end of the day, I feel like his biggest enemy is himself outside the ring. We don't even need to pull it up on the website because we know what he's done. He did a hit and run. He hit an old lady in a car, and then he tried to flee the scene.
No, I don't think it was an old lady. I think it was a pregnant lady.
Oh, pregnant lady. Oh, that's even worse.
No, he's with GAT.
There you go.
That's a supplement company.
Yeah.
So you'll make all right money with that.
Anyway.
I was thinking, if there's anyone that's asking for money and you should give it to, it's John Jones.
Yeah.
He is one of the biggest draws. On one side, there's a ton of MMA fans that they respect him so much. He's the best. They love him a lot. And then on the other side, there's people that hate what he's done on the outside, and they want him to lose. The same way Conor would talk shit, and everyone would want him to lose.
Absolutely. And also with John Jones, he's tested positive for cocaine. He's tested positive for steroids.
Everything under the sun, I think.
Yeah.
everything under the sun. Whatever the guy can give him, he's taken it and he's popped for it. So
yeah, I mean, that dude pretty much nearly blew up the lab a couple of times.
He probably did. I think they were going we've never tested this before. We've found a new substance in your body, dude. If there's anyone that should get paid, it's John Jones because of how much hard he's worked for the company. Yeah. If there's anyone that should ask for money and should receive it, it's him because of the amount of big names he's taken out of the water and done it in pretty fantastic style. You're putting his personal stuff aside. He deserves that money. It's just the same thing was happening with Masvidal. Masvidal wanted big money as well, but to be honest, he's had two good knockouts, and then he had the thing with Nate Diaz, which is a good fight for as long as it lasted. I just don't see him as that big a draw. And now Gilbert Burns is versing Kamaru Usman, and Gilbert Burns, he's a beast. I was telling you off air that we already know his wrestling is, because he was a 2-time world champion in wrestling. We know, he's a Brazilian guy, so obviously he's going to be coming with a good knowledge of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So his ground game and his takedown defense and offense will be up there. When I watched him against Tyron Woodley, he picked him apart. Honestly, I saw him and I thought he looks like he was the champion and Tyron was the contender. It didn't make sense. He was shot. His boxing was so crisp, and the pace that he put on Tyron Woodley for 5 rounds, I was like, this dude's got cardio as well. It just seems like the welterweight division is the perfect place for Gilbert right now because he's doing so well, and rightfully so. He should get slotted into that number 1 title contender spot against Kamaru.
It's just a shame because truth be told, Gilbert Burns is slowly rising up the ranks of the division, because if you look at the welterweight division right now, 3 names that stand out, of course we've got the champ Kamaru Usman, and we got the baddest motherfucker Jorge Masvidal, and then of course we got, surprise surprise motherfuckers, the king is back himself, Conor McGregor. Now there's a lot of talk amongst the welterweight division, and since now we're bringing up on the subject of Conor McGregor, he is probably one of the most unpredictable fighters in terms of direction in the UFC, because we didn't see the welterweight coming. I didn't see that coming.
I saw it as kind of just a tune-up fight to get back into the lightweight, and he just didn't have to cut weight. He didn't have to go through that, so he could get back in. And he's already said before, because when he, with the Eddie Alvarez thing, he already said, I want all the belts. And this was when Tyron was and he had a bit of beef with Tyron at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It would only make sense if they started bringing one championship's hydration test, because the people, Kamaru's the champion, right? He's got the belt.
Mm-hmm.
Tyron Woodley, Kamaru Usman, they've all walk around at least 190 to 200, and they cut through diet, and then they cut water beforehand to just make 170. Have you seen Kamaru's back? It's scary. It's like a cobra back. It's insane. I'm really confused how he doesn't fight at middleweight, because as a welterweight, he is enormous.
Yeah.
He is so big.
See, that's the thing when fighters cut weight. It's actually the rehydration itself afterwards that gives them sometimes a little bit of an advantage. We've talked about this before many times, is that Paulo Costa in middleweight, there was an argument that people believed that he rehydrated and
with IVs and that. Even though IVs have been banned, because he would put on about 20 to 30 pounds just overnight, and you would be like,
So when you fight, it was literally it's like a middleweight trying to fight a heavyweight, pretty much.
Oh, I'd say light heavyweight, but probably right now, because he's training and things like that, he's probably around the light and heavyweight area. He's a big dude. He's always been a big dude, and he's a scary motherfucker.
Yeah, I honestly believe that Israel Adesanya, even though he is a champ, Israel Adesanya, one of the greatest strikers ever.
His striking accuracy is so good, and he's very precise, super precise.
But the problem is with Paulo Costa is just a different animal, man. When he fought Yoel Romero, they went to town on each other, man. I mean, they literally, it was a brawl. And the thing is, you do that when you're with Yoel Romero, it shows what kind of a character he is.
Yeah, Costa definitely won against Romero. You can look at the fight again. Don't even say Romero got robbed, because Costa totally did way more damage, and he was the dude packs heat. His striking is not precise compared to Israel's, but the power that guy has, and apparently he's an absolute workhorse. He's the first to enter the gym. He's the last to leave. He's a really hard worker, and you can tell, because for a big guy like that, we see your Romero gas, right? We see him gas all the time, and then he does this weird, drunken boxing thing, lulls you into that little false sense of security, and wham, hits you with the right overhand or a big flying knee. But Paulo doesn't do that. He can have that output. You'll notice his output is really high, and that's strange for such a big guy that, let's be real, could be a light heavyweight.
That could be a future option, because there's a little bit of shit talk between the middleweights and the light heavyweights. We know who we're talking about: Israel Adesanya and John Jones. Jones has got beef with anybody, beef with everybody. Literally, before we filmed the podcast today, he literally called out Mike Tyson.
He called out Mike Tyson. I don't see that happening. I don't really want to see a young person versus Mike. And I know Mike, he's 50, but really his physique shows he's like 30. Because the dude's ripped. The dude's.
Have you seen the photos? He looks great.
He's not obviously as defined, but he's 50. Give him. I don't know if he's on the TRT or anything like that. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't. I wouldn't be surprised if he was. That's just his genetics, because he's 53, isn't he? He's 53.
53, but like if you think about it, he looks great for 53. Like most 53-year-olds don't look like that. Well, I remember reading about it. He says one of the reasons why he claimed he looked that good is because he switched to a vegan diet now. We're not really going to be an advocate for vegans, but he claims a lot of it was the reason why. He said he felt a lot more clearer. He felt like he had more energy to train. And then not only that, but like we've seen it in the videos that he's posted. Like he's known for that right hook, right uppercut.
He's fast. The one thing I thought, because I know the power doesn't really go away. And that doesn't really fade till a lot later on. You keep your power, you keep your, that strength aspect. And you expect him to be that fast, as well as so mobile. He does that cool little peekaboo style where he's moving about, moving his head, because he's the smaller guy, moving back and forth in that. It's impressive. I want him to fight someone. I know Tito Ortiz called him out. I'm not really a huge fan of Tito. He's alright. There's all kinds of compilations out there, like Tito being a dumbass, part 1, part 2, part 3. There's quite a lot. He called out Mike Tyson. I would like to see that. I think Tyson would smack him around.
Yeah. So see, the thing is, because he's a boxer basically, and we're talking about mainly UFC fighters. Like, if someone wanted to fight Mike Tyson, it has to be in a boxing match. Because UFC's a whole different ball game. You know what I mean? If a boxer went into a UFC ring, they're not going to have as much chance, really, truth be told. But if you took a UFC fighter to a boxing ring, there is a slight chance. I mean, because what was his arm?
Well, MMA has one aspect of boxing, which is a sole aspect, which is boxing. Boxing only has that one aspect, whereas in MMA you can use anything.
Yes.
You can use anything, and a lot of people that are quite successful are in the UFC. They tend to be wrestlers, but a lot of them are really superior strikers, like Israel Adesanya, Conor McGregor, Max Holloway. They're all, and Jose Aldo. They're all really good striking wise. It's no surprise that if you put an MMA person in a boxing ring, the boxer has a huge advantage that they're most likely going to win. If you put a boxer in an MMA ring, there's so many different variables to take into account, and you can't, imagine Mike Tyson trying to learn new skills like wrestling and grappling and things like that. I've no doubt he would have been really good when he was like 20, 30, in his teens or something like that. It'd be insane if he was in the UFC at that age. But learning new skills like that, you just don't have that. It's just not. It's not going to happen. It's like one of those things like they put out there. Oh, he might be. He's not. He's going to be in a boxing ring where all the boxing fans are, who know him the best and love him the most. I see him against a older opponent like Evander Holyfield.
That's what I was thinking as well, because Evander Holyfield is actually silver age. He is actually 57. So there's obviously a few years older, but there'll be a good money fight. You know what I mean?
Well, they fought
twice. Yeah, they fought twice before, and the second time was when
Evander's no slouch either. He looks okay as well.
Yeah. I mean, and the second fight that they had together, basically, that was when he got his ear bitten. Mike Tyson bit his ear off. So might as well go for the third match and try and get the other ear. Oh, look at this. Evander Holyfield trains with Vladimir Klitschko, who had a potential fight with Mike Tyson.
I never really. You look at those headlines and it can be a load of rubbish,
Yeah.
I would go with whatever Mike Tyson's camp tells them in that. I would love to see him against Holyfield. I honestly think that would make more money than Mayweather versus McGregor.
Yeah. Tyson's been out of the ring for 15 years, man. You know, that's when he put the animal back in the cage, and now he's just...
Well, he used to always say that I don't like even working out and things like that. I don't even like working out because it starts flaming up his ego, and that makes sense. And now he's just thrown it out the window. Now he's like, I'm gonna fight for charity, which is really good of him to fight for charity and not just, you know, it's not like he really needs money because he's got his what do you call it? His Tyson Ranch, his big weed mansion / you know, business that he's going to have that's going to come really soon. What were you thinking? So what were you thinking with Kamaru Usman coming back to the UFC? What were you thinking about Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman? What were you thinking?
Well, Gilbert Burns he's slowly researched through the ranks, and Kamaru Usman, like, you know, he's achieved a lot. I'll give you that. But who he is as a person, and when he the way that he acts and the way that he talks, like we listen to him on Joe Rogan, I'm just like, I don't know. He's
a bit dry.
Yeah, he's a little bit dry. Now the thing is with me personally is I fucking love villains, man. Like whenever I go to a movie, I'm always rooting for the villain because basically I reckon. Here's my theory. A hero is only as good as the villains he beats.
Batman and Joker.
Yeah, it's like that. And that's the idea for me. And when I talk about villains in the UFC, I was a big fan of Colby Covington. Like,
I thought it was so strange that even though he was going to win, they said they were going to cut him. And then when he got on the mic, because he knew that like he was going to get kicked off the UFC, and then he went and said, you know, Brazil, you're a filthy dump, bunch of animals, and like he was doing it to stir up, and now that it caused so much controversy, they were like, we have to keep him. He sells, and Colby just went full into it, and then, you know, he was good friends with Jorge, and then he was like, you know what, you know, let's get rid of Jorge. He's not my pal anymore. I'm gonna fight him, and I thought that fight between Colby and Kamaru was very competitive, and I think Colby. I would have liked to see him against Tyron Woodley. That would have been a really good fight. I don't know what's coming next for Colby, I'll be honest.
Yeah, he's been pretty quiet recently, you know, because when he was leading up to his Kamaru Usman fight, you know, he was always flashing about, hanging out with strippers, trying to promote, you know, but say what you want about Colby, but man, he has the skills to back it up. And hopefully we'll get to see him back in the ring some point soon, but for Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns, you know, I want to see Burns win. I want to see, but there's a lot, because the reason why I like the fight the most is there's a lot of similarities between the two, you know. They're both 33 years old. They're both quite similar in height, you know. They've got, well, Kamaru Usman has a 13 centimeter reach advantage, which is quite significant. But
I think there was a similar difference in reach advantage between Burns and Woodley, though, and I think Burns was very good at closing the distance. What I wanted to mention was there's not just Usman and Burns fighting on that card. There's quite a big, like, this is a very stacked card for UFC 251. And the reason why, it's on UFC Fight Island, and we've got a little bit more information about it. So it's Yas Island. We know it's in Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates. It's not a very big island, I'll be honest. We know that when you arrive, they test you straight away. You've got a designated area for all the fighters to be, and you don't get to leave. You stay on that island, I think even for the entirety of that thing. It's unprecedented in what it is. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the villain that was in the Bruce Lee film. It wasn't Enter the Dragon, but it was something. It was some. Oh, I love Bruce Lee. I really should forget this, but was it Mr. Han or something like that? And from the Bruce, I'm gonna look it up. Right, when all those different fighters of different principles get they all come on boats onto this private island where there's those billionaire kind of like elite and they're all watching them fight and things like that. That's what it reminds me of. Dana is like Mr. Han. I know they also did it in Mortal Kombat, but I'm trying to think of who it was.
Well, it does sound a bit like Mortal Kombat when you think about it.
It does.
Because when we watch Mortal Kombat, they actually fight on they basically fight on beaches, on these little platforms, They have all these like rings, these arenas. I'd like to have it like that, and to keep the fight game going, to keep people distracted from what's going on with the whole COVID situation, which we'll get into a little bit more later on. But you got to give hats off to Dana, man. Like,
everyone was telling him no, and he was like, I literally could not care what your opinion is.
Yeah.
Just segueing to what I was talking about before, he actually was Enter the Dragon. It was like a heroin drug lord who runs his heroin cooking business from a secluded island, but he brings in all these like fleets of fighters and they all fight out, and then Bruce Lee's the main character and he's almost like a spy that investigates and things like that.
Did you know a little fun fact? Did you know Jackie Chan was in that movie?
He was in that, and he said he got smacked by Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee didn't show anything, and then when Jackie Chan, like, because he fell over, and it was good acting, but he also was hurt, and then Bruce Lee came over, and he went, Jackie, I'm so sorry, and picked him up, and he said he was sorry, and then Jackie, he was hurt, but he wasn't that hurt, and he would go, ooh, 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 and then afterwards, after that thing, Bruce Lee would always remember Jackie, because he would go like this, and then Jackie would be like, and Jackie was just like that time. He was just a stuntman that was doing that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now he's one of the greatest. So Dana is pretty much Mr. Han for this Yaz Island. And I'm pretty sure they're doing 4 events on this fight island. So there's the Calvin Cater fight as well. They're doing 4. Yeah, they're doing 4 against it. So I think for now, because it hasn't came up to these fight nights, but we should talk about the fight night other than Alexander. Oh no, there's Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. Mm-hmm. Big name. As you know, I'm Australian, and I would say you're part Australian. Like you're English, but you came over here. You got an Australian accent, pretty much.
Well, the situation is basically I was born in England. I was born in Romford, East London, and then I came out here when I was 9. I'm 21 now, so I've been in Australia for more than I've been in England.
I would call you Australian, but are you having your Aussie pride for the next fight?
Absolutely. Well, one of the reasons why is just I love the story of Alexander Volkanovski. He's a short guy. How tall is he?
Oh, I'd have to check actually. He's 1.68 meters. It's not that. Was that 5'7"?
Yeah, roughly I would say so. But really, like, he was a big dude. Like, back in the day, he used to be a rugby player.
Five and a half.
5'5". He used to be a heavy. Like, if you took him when he was a rugby player and you put him when he was in his rugby player years and put him in the UFC, he would have been pretty much a light heavyweight. Yeah,
he was definitely a big guy, especially but that's what you need. That's one of the physiques you actually need for rugby and that. He's 31 now, so he's going into pretty much his prime. Max Holloway, 28. He's still 28.
28.
But remember, like, one of his first, I think was it his first fight, he fought against Conor. Conor was like his first fight, pretty much. And he must have been early 20s, just like Conor. Mm-hmm. And that was like one of the only fights that Conor's went to decision. So even then, Max Holloway, he knew what he was doing. We saw him against Holloway before, and he did so well. I'm so proud of Alexander. I actually picked Volkanovski was going to win against Aldo, which he won straight up, and against Holloway, which he won. There's a bit of Aussie pride with when it comes to Volkanovski because the dude's a good champion. The dude is a good champion. He's very humble. He, when he says very minor things about his opponent, and then a huge amount of respect before he goes in there. He's quite similar to Robert Whittaker. But Volkanovski, he's a really good champion. I think he's a really good ambassador for the sport because I expect him to do really well in this next fight, I'll be honest. I expect him to do really well.
Well, the thing is with Alexander Volkanovski is that basically he was actually caught out by Henry Cejudo. So what they did was they had the idea of potentially making Henry Cejudo. He wanted to have the idea of making a quadruple champion.
Yeah, C4 as he says it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I feel like Alexander Volkanovski was just too much of a jump, and just it's from where Henry Cejudo stands to go up and fight Alexander Volkanovski just like that, and it's going to be your first fight. I just couldn't see it happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if he wanted to get up there, he would have to fight at least a couple of fights at what is it? He would have to at least fight a couple of fights at lightweight, is it?
What are you talking about?
Alexander Volkanovski.
No, he's at featherweight.
Featherweight. He would have to fight at least a couple of fights at featherweight before he even goes for the title.
I just, with Volkanovski, he's very good at putting the pressure on the opponent and putting them on the back foot. His leg kicks are mad. His leg kicks are crazy. And I think he's one of those fighters. You know how they go in with a game plan and they forget? He's not like that. He sticks to what his coaches says. I think that also plays to his ego and things like that, because he doesn't really have much of an ego. He sticks to the game plan that his coaches and what he's said he's going to do, and he goes out and does it. Some of them, they say they're going to, how Eddie with Conor said, I'm going to wrestle him and things like that. And then he got caught into a brawl, and there was a bit of ego with that, and then he got starched by Conor very quickly. Volko does it.
Yeah, Volkov's got an 18-fight winning streak as well.
Yeah.
And if you want to look at his resume, he's even beaten the great Jose Aldo. Probably who was at the time probably one of the pound-for-pound greatest fighters in the world.
Definitely.
Not even that, but he's knocked out some big names on there. He's even knocked out Chad Mendes. Now, forgive us, but that Chad Mendes was the first time I actually heard about Alexander Volkanovski. I think we were there together watching it in varsity.
I knew about Volkanovski before then, but I hadn't seen him in any main fights.
Yeah.
And we watched him against Aldo, and we were really impressed. I mean, and speaking of Aldo, he's on the exact same card against Peter Yan. I watched Peter Yan against Uriah Faber. And because Peter isn't, Peter Yan, I don't.
I think it's pronounced Petir.
Petir?
Petir. Yeah.
I'm just gonna say Peter.
Because it's Russian.
Peter Yan, he worked really well against Uriah Faber, and then, it was weird to see him fighting Jose Aldo after Aldo was off a loss. Really weird. He's very young as well. He's about 27 years old, and they'll be fighting at bantamweight. Which is quite light, so that's 61.2 kilos.
That Peter, he's been waiting for his title shot, and he was a prospect, for a while, and he's coming off a great winning streak. There's no one amongst the ranks. There was no one who really stood out until he finally fought Jimmy Rivera.
Yeah,
he was in the top 10 rankings, and then he went on to fight the legend himself, Uriah Faber. And he tore him in half within the first minute of the fight. He head kicked him in 43 seconds into the fight, and then everyone was just up on their feet. And right then and there, everyone knew, okay, let's give him a title shot. But the thing is, no offense to Jose Aldo, but I want to see him fight Cejudo instead.
I want Aldo against Marlon Reyes again, because I picked Aldo winning. I picked him winning. So it was weird to see him lose, but then when he did lose and they give him a better fight this time, I was like, fair enough. It was so close, and I really thought he did win. I'm expecting Peter to win. I'm expecting him to win. He's young. He's got a lot of talent. He's definitely a big up-and-comer. I'm expecting him to win. His striking is, I wouldn't say weird, but it's certainly unorthodox, but he does really well in the stand-up game. Uriah's no slouch, and he picked him apart. He picked apart Uriah. I mean, Uriah is an aged, veteran in the UFC company, but he did really, really, really well. On top of that, there's the women's strawweight fight, which is Andrade versus Nama Nunes, but there's also Rebus versus Paige Van Zandt. Let's get into the strawweight fight. Let's talk about that one. We can talk about the Van Zandt fight later on in another podcast. But I would say we're saying Andrade versus Nama Nunes 2.
Yeah.
Who are you thinking?
Well, Nama Nunes, she is she's one of those people you look at, right, and you would say, no, there's no way I would say that woman's a fighter.
She's not you would look at her and be like, nah, she's not a fighter.
She is this small little girl, but she's got a big heart. Like, the first time I ever heard about her was her fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and she was literally throughout the whole fight, build up to the fight, Joanna Jędrzejczyk was just ripping her, calling her.
She's got heart. She's got heart, and she stayed very. You could tell it was affecting her. But she stayed very composed. I would say,
because Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she was having a go at her for mental health. She was making fun of her mental health history because I believe she had come from a poor background or a poor family or some form of broken home.
Yeah, well,
and then
she tends to do that. Yeah. Joanna's scary.
Yeah.
Let's be real. She's super scary.
She likes to exploit the weakness,
Yeah. Who was the... I can't pronounce her surname, but it was Carolina that she fought against. And that was on the Alvarez versus McGregor card. She was really scary. She's Joanna's scary as.
Yeah. Well, her last fight against Weili Zhang, probably arguably one of the greatest female fights ever.
Yeah.
If not, if I were to call top 10 fights we've ever watched, definitely up there. Because that was the fight that saved the Euro Romero versus Alexander. Sorry, what is it?
Romero versus Adesanya.
Adesanya, of course. Because the beatings that both of those women took, the size. The size of Joanna Jędrzejczyk's forehead.
The hematoma that came right. I think it was from a strike to the forehead, and it just blew up. And then each round we were like, "Oh shit, it's getting bigger."
It's just kind of like Megamind, buddy.
She did look like Megamind. She looked. Well, yeah, all the memes that came out afterwards, it was like Megamind, and it was all kinds of stuff.
I tell you what, the internet does not take anything for
it takes no prisoners. It takes no
prisoners, no mercy whatsoever.
So we saw her against Rose, and Rose beat her twice, quite easily. One was by decision, and one was by KO. We know Rose was fighting Jessica Andrade. And Rose was winning that fight. And then she went for this. She went for a weird kind of. I think she went for a weird Kimura or something like that. Mm-hmm. From what I can remember, it was a while ago. And then Andrade dumped her on her head, and because she was in that weird Kimura thing, she couldn't roll, and she couldn't get a good brace when she hit the ground.
That was scary.
That was scary because it hit her right on her neck, and then you're like, oh. Is she all right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of spinal injuries are super serious, especially in the UFC. I'm expecting Rose to beat Jessica. If her mind is right, because we know that she was supposed to fight earlier, and she had some stuff going on with her family, and that's fair enough that she doesn't have to disclose that, and she can just be like, I need a bit of time right now. She was picking up apart Andrade earlier in the fight. I know we didn't see a huge amount.
Yeah, well, she's got some names. The thing is with Rose is that she's only 27. She's very young.
But Andrade is 28.
Yeah.
There's no huge difference. Rose actually has a bit of a height advantage. So, I don't have this in feet, but Andrade is 1.55 meters, and Nama Nunes is 1.65 meters. There's a slight little changed, 10 centimeters a bit taller. The weight the same, the reach slightly better in Rose's position.
Mm-hmm.
Rose has got really good distance control. She's really good at getting in and out. She's really good at being just out of range so that she can come right back in and engage again. I'm expecting Rose to win, and when it comes to strawweights, it's kind of hard because like you don't know if it's gonna go to a decision or a KO, because a lot of the time they don't have a huge amount of power, but their technique is very good. I would probably say either KO or decision in terms of Rose.
Okay. So let's finish off this podcast because we're reaching just to the end. Giving our fight predictions for UFC 251. So we're just skipping over the next event. So, Rose Namajunas versus Jessica Andrea. Who are you going with?
Rose.
With me too. Jose Aldo versus Peter Yan.
Peter Yan.
Peter Yan. Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway.
Volkanovski all the way. Aussie Pride.
Aussie Pride, Volkanovski, and finally Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns.
Controversial, but I'm going for Burns.
Yeah,
Burns is new blood, and I think he's going to do really well in this division.
Okay. I actually agree with you on all of those. I mean, it's going to be a great card, you know?
Yeah, we can always reflect on it later because we haven't gone through any of the prelims, and we also have missed out on the Van Zandt fight. We'll crack into that at a different podcast, possibly next week.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was our first podcast. It was a bit different. It's not always going to be MMA. It is going to be our regular life. It's going to be about things.
Us talking shit, as always.
Yeah, talking shit as always, but I'm excited for this, dude. This is a big change of pace for what we're used to.
We took the first step. We
Took the
literally
first
took
step,
the first step. And, you know, from here, it's just up. What goes up. And also, I just want to say, personally, for all the people who are witnessing this and watching this and listening to this, you literally have just witnessed the part of something special, and you are part of the beginning. So, personally, I just want to say thank you. And
thank you for listening to the Last Set podcast, our little creation in my room, and hopefully we're having some fun, and let's see if it goes somewhere. Peace, guys.
take care. All
See
the
you
best.
guys.